Hey guys. So I think I mentioned in my last video that I thought the PTO clutch was making some noise, and I had every intention of taking it out and trying to replace the bearing, even though they may not really be replaceable technically. But really everything can be taken apart. I found this killer deal on this brand new PTO clutch on eBay, of all places. Normally I don't get good deals there. It's a Stens 255297X Extreme Duty clutch. It's got a replaceable bearing, and I paid 80 bucks for it, shipped. The cheapest PTO clutch that I could find, whether it's OEM or aftermarket Stens like this one, was about 150 or so. So, I mean, I got a killer deal on this thing, 80 bucks. I mean, I couldn't, if just to cost the bearings, two new bearings is probably 20 bucks a piece. That's 40 bucks. And now we spent $40 on a clutch that's, what, 11 years old and may have other issues, so not worth it. So I just got a whole new clutch assembly. Hopefully it fits. In fact, let's unbox it and take a look at it. Let's see what we got. It's got a cool coil technology, replaceable pulley bearing, extreme tough wire protection system, upgraded performance bearings, precision machine billet pulley. Okay, fancy schmancy. Again, couldn't beat the price. Yeah, looks pretty similar to what's on there. No impact guns. Check system voltage. Blah, 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 blah. Interesting. Okay. So this is probably what they mean by a replaceable bearing, because there's a snap ring that holds this one in rather than it being swaged. The bearing looks to be a no-name Chinese bearing. Not terribly surprising. Wasn't expecting an NSK at this price point, right? Let's see what this bearing looks like. But now this bearing here, this one looks like it's swaged in place. There's no snap ring on this one. So this bearing does not appear to be removable, but again, I think that there are ways you can get these off. I think you can press them out or maybe even grind those little swage marks off. Might work. But again, don't need to do it. This clutch was a killer deal. Alright, let's start with taking the PTO clutch off. I'm going to take the muffler guard off. And this muffler guard is missing some bolts to hold the muffler. The muffler just kind of falls off. Taking the muffler guard off will give us some better clearance. So it's a 1/2-inch socket. And a 1/2-inch wrench. Ugh. One. It's a little bit more difficult to get to. Can you do that without stripping it? Nope, we're gonna strip it. Let's get a socket. There we go, got a ratchet. I say socket and then ratchet. It's been a long day, folks. There we go. Is this required to get the PTO off? Probably not, but again, just makes it a little bit easier to see. For me and for you. Okay. Come on. Pops off like that, nice and dirty. Wow. So I'm going to put the nut and the bolt back on here just so we don't lose anything on both sides. And now you can get a better look at the PTO clutch. It's right here. I might have to jack the tractor up a little bit to be able to get the bolt out of it. Let's see. Let's get this out of the way. Let me resituate things. Okay, 9/16 socket. And that's too tight for my DeWalt here. Let's see what else we have in the arsenal to loosen that. Good old Ingersoll Rand should do the trick. This thing's about 1,000 times stronger than the DeWalt. At least it seems like it. Cool, it's working. I'm gonna go take the tension off the drive belt. And let's continue to take this off. This belt is now loose here. And so is our PTO clutch. Pretty cool, huh? Just falls off. There should be a wiring harness back here somewhere. I do emphasize somewhere. Oh, it's all the way back. Jeez. Okay. Let's move this out of the way. We don't need that for the moment. Alright, so I gotta reach all the way back there. Oh, and there's water dripping out of the PTO. Lovely. It's never a good sign, right? Let's see, what kind of connector is this? Is there any positive retention? I can't even tell. Can't even see. Let's take a closer look. All right, so I got the wiring harness off. It's all the way in the back there by where that hydrostatic line goes up through the chassis. It's easiest to open the connector with a screwdriver and just pull on the wire, but clutch is free now. All right, let's see if we can disassemble this clutch just for shits and giggles. First, I'm going to punch out that there's kind of like a little D adapter at the bottom. Just about out. Oh, correction, it is out. It does feel a little gritty in there. Let's see if we can jam out this inner race here. Oh, not yet. Probably, oh, there we go. Separate that, right? So that just came apart. This is our inner race here. Clutch doesn't look too tragic. Let's see which one's the noisy one. So there's a ball bearing here. That one actually feels pretty good. It's a nice NSK bearing. Guess that leaves one possibility. Oh yeah, this one feels horrible. You can probably hear that. That's our noise. And this one's gonna be an NSK, let's see. It is not, it's a PPL. In case anybody needs it, the number off this bearing is a 6206D as in dog, U as in ultra. 6206DU. And this one is a 6006DU. 6006DU on that one. So this clutch is still good. I'm not going to junk it. I'll keep it as a spare for spare parts, but obviously this bottom bearing is toast. And there's no snap ring there. Might be able to just whack it out with a hammer. Don't really see much holding it in. There's a little bit of a swage right there. I don't know if you guys can see that on the camera. Just a little boob holding it in place. We'll mess around with that later. Again, we have a whole new clutch, so that'll be a project for another time. Guess I need to wash my hands. Got a little dirty. In case anybody needs the actual part number of this clutch, like the original manufacturer, this one is a, let's see, a Warner. The part number is 521925. 521925. 521925. This one was manufactured in February of 09, it looks like. And it looks like it's a Warner IG 2000 series. Hey, it did pretty well, right? Lasted a while. One kind of design problem I see with this whole unit is that it's difficult for water to get in this bearing because it's going to be close to the crankshaft and your water is not really going to get in from below and there's not much space above. But if you wash this thing off with a garden hose like I did, water gets trapped in there. In that area in there. In fact, you could see some moisture in there. So over time, that'll probably seep through that seal and wreck that bearing. So that's probably what happened. And let's see, so that sits on there. So if you spray water up into that area, then water will get and sit on that bearing. So I'd recommend not getting your PTO clutch wet at all. Don't even clean it unless you're going to disassemble it and clean it. So at least now we know, right? I'm not going to put this on until I get the transmission issues worked out. Only because to be able to replace the transmission belt, it's probably going to be a lot easier to do that with the PTO clutch off the tractor. So I'm going to kind of call it quits for now until we get our belt. Just for giggles, let's take our transmission belt off. You can see it's pretty nasty. I'm going to cut it just to make it easier, because there's a hydraulic line that goes around. But let's take a look at the condition of this belt. It's probably original. Let's get it up on the bench. So you can see this belt has definitely seen better days. And the back is a, yeah, this is an original belt. I recognize the part number. Back is all glazed. And you can see what the front looks like. So definitely time for a belt. I believe this is a Gates, the part number for this I think is, oh boy. You know what? Let me withhold that until it arrives. I don't want to give you guys bad information. While I was messing around with the hydro, or the belt I guess, I noticed some oil on the plywood and I traced it back to this governor arm on the engine. That seal behind there is leaking, so I ordered a new seal and we'll show you how to replace that too. Thankfully you don't have to take too much apart. It's a pretty easy repair. But let's see, what should we do now? Let's take the tensioner arm for the transmission belt off, replace that pulley. I have another one up here, and we'll lube it up and make sure that thing is nice and freely moving. Alright, so to take that arm off, right here you gotta remove that bolt. That's a 9/16. I got a 9/16 wrench up top there. So let's see if this little gun's strong enough. Doesn't seem so. Let's get the good old Ingersoll Rand. Alright, hopefully you guys can see there. Got my 3/8 impact gun, air-powered one, and we'll just buzz this off real quick. There we go. Like it wasn't even there. So that's gonna come off there. Ooh, that's nice and icky with oil. I wonder why. Maybe an oil slick somewhere. This is on there good, huh? There we go. So, Let's get you situated so you can see what's going on here. Man, I'm all full of oil. Hang on a second. Thing's holding a lot of it. Alright, let's get you up on the bench actually. Sorry, my workbench is a bit of chaos right now. So, the way this was mounted, I believe, now I'm forgetting, was it like that? Or like that? Judging by the marks here, I think it was like that. And this has to be able to rotate or pivot right there. And it was quite a bit of dirt and grit in there. So we'll clean that off real well. Then we'll put some anti-seize in there and also on the mating surface there so it doesn't lock up again. Before we do that, let's take this pulley off. We're going to replace it. I think all the pulleys on this tractor are the same part. Kind of neat. It looks like a 9/16 right there. Everything else, it is. Stick our back there. Put a wrench in the back. Close that. There we go. That's on there good. There we go. Remember, this pulley is not the same on both sides. This little lip here needs to go towards the shaft like that. Otherwise it'll rub. You guys can see that. But yeah, this feels a little gritty. Let's clean all this stuff up and we'll resume. Okay, I checked the footage just to be sure. This is how things came apart. Let you take a good look at that in case you get lost. So this little piece that's bent up where the spring hangs onto, this little spacer goes right there like so, and this pulley goes on like so. I think I showed you guys this before, but this the part number for this pulley, you can get it from Stens. It's a part number 280-646. 280-646. So we're just going to put one of our nuts below here. Again, 9/16. Tighten that up. This bolt goes through here. We're not going to tighten that up again yet, because we need to put it on the mower. So let's put our wrench on here and snug this up. Oops, sorry about that. Get you guys resituated away from the impact gun. There we go. Snug this down. Very silent. Okay. Now we want to lube this area up here so we don't get any binding. I've been giving some thought as to what kind of lube I want to use. I'm thinking of just using this Hermetex anti-seize. Not sure if it's the best thing for the job, but I've seen it work magic in many areas. Also spray it with fluid film. No, I don't want to use fluid film. Use grease, but I don't know. I think we'll just do this. I'm sure it's going to be better than it was, right? Just giving this a nice coating here. I'm also going to coat these two. Like so. Don't be afraid to coat the threads, you won't hurt anything. Put this on. There we go. Nice and lubed. Okay, let's put our tensioner assembly back in place. Like so. Put the bolt up through there. There we go. Let's get our nut on the other side. Okay, let's put our wrench back up there. Just snug it down with the impact. Okay, let's make sure it moves freely. Moves very freely, look at that. Okay, since this hydro on this side was the one that was giving me some problems, or at least I think it was, we're going to start with this hydro. Well, first of all, there's a fluid filter underneath this covered there. It's a spin-on automotive style filter. I jacked up this side of the tractor just to give, I'm going to take this wheel off just to give us access to that. Should make things a lot easier. Before you do all that, you want to loosen the fill plug on top just to make sure you can get fluid into it after you drain fluid out. I believe it's an Allen wrench. I'm going to hit it with some PB blaster here. Then I'm going to let it sit for a while. Then I'm going to crack it open with an Allen key. Let's figure out what size it is. Okay, I cracked it loose. That sucker's on there tight, so be prepared. Okay, so our fill plug is out. I'm just gonna, whoa, leak it out of the fill plug. Interesting. Okay, let's get a towel. And I just remembered there's a fluid reservoir, so that's probably why it's leaking out the fill plug. And that's not terribly nice looking fluid. This doesn't look like a factory 20W50 or 1550 engine oil. Maybe a mix of some other lubricant, either that or it's just way past its prime. So I'll let that drain a bit and we'll pick it up. All right, let's get the tire off. 3/4 inch socket. Whoops, let's loosen it. 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare a thumb war. Hey, puppy. All right, wheel comes off, and we should get much better access now. Much better access indeed. Oh, I made a mess. Let me get a towel, do some more cleanup. All right, so there's our filter, and there should be some 10mm screws that hold this cover on. So we'll just take those screws off, the bolts rather. One here. It's kind of nice that these have a spin-on filter. A lot of these newer ones don't have any filter. It's internal to the unit. You can't really even change it without taking the whole thing out and apart. I think they switched to the to that service-free model. I want to say in 2012 or 13, somewhere around there. Like I said, this is a 2009. Looks like this one's gonna break, and it did. Lovely. Any more? Or is that it? Oh, one here. Total of 3 screws, and 1 broke. 1 out of 3 ain't bad, right? Doesn't look like this thing's ever been serviced, though. Judging by the grass that's caked around it. Okay. A little bit of grass there. All right, let me get a wrench for this filter. Clean some of the grass out around it first. That should be a 14 flute Toyota filter. Or Toyota wrench, rather. I took the liberty of picking one up before all this started to make my life easier. It's a little cramped in there. I'm going to take the air gun and just blow out the debris from there. There we go. Okay. Hopefully this fits. It does. That's a 14 flute Toyota filter, like I said. That's on there pretty good and tight, so you might have struggled to get that filter off without this wrench. Fluid should just pour out. Yep, just like that. Yuck, yuck, yuck. I think we'll let that drain for a little while. A couple minutes later and we're still draining. Now while that's doing its thing, just thought I'd mention, Hydrogear does make a service kit for the ZT-2800, 31, and 3400 series. You can spend about 80 bucks for it. It comes with all the fluid that you need to do both sides and 2 filters and whatnot, or you can just go aftermarket. I have a Stens oil filter that replaces this Hydrogear filter. It's a 120-738. It's quite a bit cheaper going this route by an aftermarket. And Stens makes pretty good stuff. I've taken these filters apart before and they're pretty high quality inside. So decided to go aftermarket. I'm also going to use Mobil 1 15W50 engine oil instead of the Hydrogear fluid. Should be functionally equivalent, hopefully. But again, this side wasn't working so hot, so I don't see how it could make things any worse. So hopefully a fluid filter change, new belt, solves the problem on this side, but we'll see. I poured a little bit of fresh oil down in the reservoir there. Just letting it drain out here just to flush out any contaminants that might be sitting in the bottom. I don't know how much good it's going to do, but only poured a little bit down there. We'll see. Let that finish draining now. Okay, we got pretty clean oil coming out now, or far cleaner than it was. I'm going to screw on the new filter. Then I'm going to start filling the transmission. I might just fill it through that expansion tank. I don't know how long it'll take, because getting a tube in that fill port is going to be kind of annoying, and I'll have to hand pump it all. I mean, I could, but this thing has an expansion tank. Why not, right? Well, we'll see how it goes. Okay, let's put the new filter on. Hopefully it fits, we'll see. Come on. People that take the screw on an oil filter. There we go. Jeez. Can't trust me to do anything, can you? We'll just snug that down with our filter wrench. Not too tight. Got the new filter spun on, and I'll start filling it through the reservoir, and we'll see how far we can get with that. Filling through here wasn't too bad. It took maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And we are starting to overflow out the fill hole. So that's about where it was when we started all this. So I'll put the fill cap back on, and I'll top the reservoir off, and you just have to follow the bleed procedure. I'm not going to do it now because I don't have a belt for the transmission, but essentially you want to run the hydrostatics with the wheels off the ground, kind of jacked up the way it is now. And you want to use push the motion control levers forward and backwards and forwards and backwards under no load, just to bleed the air out of the system. It'll take a little while, but it's a necessary procedure, otherwise you could damage the hydros. So I'm going to put the fill cap on, and then we'll call it a day. Well, I decided not to call it a day. I ended up doing the same thing to the other side. Don't have a second oil filter. I have one on order. That'll be here tomorrow. But I yanked the wheel off, pulled the filter off. Actually, none of the 3 screws on this side stripped out that hold that guard on. Got all the oil drained out. It's just as nasty as the other side, as you'd expect. So just kind of letting it sit here until I get a filter, and then we'll put everything back together and run that bleed procedure. Okay, the second hydro filter arrived today. I got that bolted up, and I'm now filling the reservoir, and thus this right side hydro again. I've noticed if the fill cap on the hydro is not loose, it goes in very, very slowly. I'm assuming because the air can't escape anywhere. So we're going to let that fill, and here is the transmission belt part number that I alluded to earlier. It's a Gates TrueFlex 2580, also known as a 4L580 belt. It's rated for 17 horsepower, and this is 23, but I don't know, I guess we'll see how long it lasts. This is what Gates says goes in this application, so I've got to take their word for it. Also have some 5/8 by, I think, 18 self-tapping screws to hold the muffler to the guard. As I mentioned before, these were 1/4 and they disappeared, fell out, stripped out, whatever. So I bought some screws that are the next size up that should fit in there nicely. So I'll get those installed too. Just as a test, when I was servicing this hydrostatic drive, I closed the fill plug before I knew the hydro was filled, and I filled the reservoir. And I let it sit overnight just to see if the oil would kind of seep into the hydro. It did not. So if that's the case, you want to keep the fill plug off until it overfills, then put the fill plug on, then leave a little fluid in the hydro. So I guess what's happening is it's getting airlocked. Fluid can't flow in because air can't get out. So just something to keep in mind if you're doing this service. Make sure you fill it with the fill plug off until it overflows. Or at least this one was overflowing when I started this service. So I'm assuming they should be at that level. All right, let's get to installing this belt. Hopefully you guys can see it okay like that. The fun part's going to be putting that spring on. Well, we have quite a bit of gook down here. You know what? Let me clean this off a little bit so we don't get any oil on the new belt. Need some brake cleaner and air compressed. Okay, I got things cleaned up a little bit better. Don't want our fancy new belt getting all oily, right? Looks like we're gonna have to disconnect our transmission fluid reservoir up top to get it around this hose. Let's see. Of course, you can't really see anything. Maybe I'll just disconnect this fitting here and let some oil ooze out. There's a little clamp here. Time for a pair of pliers. Position our light a little bit better and position you guys. So that's the clamp I'm going for right there. Okay, some oil is going to ooze out when we do this, no big deal. I'm just going to use a screwdriver to separate it from the nipple on the transmission. Got that disconnected. Now I'm just waiting for all the oil to stop draining so we can get that did I do this wrong? Yeah, I did, because it's got to go around that centerpiece, doesn't it? Oh boy, never a dull moment. That's the one I should have unhooked. Same type of clamp. Gonna get a pair of pliers and get in there and wedge it apart. Hope the nipple in the reservoir doesn't break. My luck, it will. Okay, got it. Ended up using these angled needle nose and about 4 hands to go and wrestle that off, and I don't think I broke anything. Lucky me. So now this has to go down through here. Let's see, does it fit through the hole with the clamp? Yeah, it does, just barely. Now we'll go and we'll pull that down, we'll get the belt around. Okay, so we got hose coming down here. Hopefully you guys can still see. Get this up on the pulley, left side transmission pulley. Got it. Let's go over the right pulley. Got it. Both pulleys. Tensioner. And now I got the crankshaft. So that's what it should look like when done. I'll get you guys a closer look. Right there. And that spring, I'll put tension on the belt like that. Now, got to put the hydro hose back together. And I got the clamp back on that hydro hose. So now we just got to put this spring on, which I'm sure is going to be tons of fun. Because if you remember, this spring is pretty darn strong. And I believe it goes on over here like so. really strong spring, so I'm going to see if I can rig something up to make this happen. Or maybe just a pair of vice grips, who knows. It's definitely a two-handed operation. What I did is I used the vice grips. I gripped the spring right there and I just kind of muscled it back onto that bracket. It actually wasn't as bad as I was expecting. So now we have a new belt on both transmissions. We have oil in the hydros. So we should be ready to start up and bleed the system. I guess we should put a muffler on there first too, right? Yeah. Okay, so I'm now repairing the muffler. I'm using a 5/16 by 18 tap. I drilled the hole oversized 1/4 inch. And we should be able to use these 5/16 by 18 screws. They should just screw right in. Should being the operative word. Let's clear some of that crud out of there. There we go. That's what's going to hold our muffler on. We'll also have to clearance drill this guard too, because they don't fit through those holes. So I'm going to go around to the other 4 holes here, or 3 holes. So all I'm doing is, like I said, just drilling it out. That one's pretty loose already. That's what she said. Pull a little bit of thread cutting oil. And just work the tap in there. You want to make sure you get it started straight. Just like that. Cut your threads. And then get out. Pretty easy. It's just sheet metal. I tried just buzzing these screws in since they are self-tappers, but that didn't work out so well. Not exactly sure why. Alright, we'll finish those up. Okay, got those holes all tapped. Now I'm going to clearance drill these holes in the guard. I guess this drill bit duller than dirt. Okay, I found a drill bit that actually drills. Just gonna drill the other 3. See what size this one is. This drill bit's seen better days. The size is all worn off. I just matched it up like this to make sure you can see the drill bit at least. Well, you want to be able to see the drill bit around the threads, just a tiny bit. Doesn't take much. And I'm holding this with a paper towel because if this thing catches, it'll go flying, and I don't want to cut myself. Just like that, pretty easy. You always want to drill slowly when you're drilling into steel. Don't go crazy. Okay, so that should be done. Let's brush all of our chips onto the table rather than the floor. Put our drill bit back. Now our muffler should just bolt right up to this. So I'm just whizzing these bolts in here. There we go. Muffler is on there pretty solid. We got our bolts here, so just gonna put this bracket back up there and that muffler should not come off anymore. Okay, we've got the muffler secured and bolted back up. Again, it's just held on with a 1/2 inch nut and bolt on 2 sides. Real easy to do. Now the next step is to start it up and see how the hydros work and bleed the air out of them. Let's crank it up and see how it runs. Recognizing there is no PTO clutch on there, I just want to see how the hydros respond before I put the PTO on. So let's give her a shot. okay. Might need a little bit of adjustment on the motion control arms, the motion control levers, but seems to be moving okay, not too bad. Okay, I'm pretty happy with how it ran in the garage. Didn't seem to have too many issues. It's definitely not a commercial grade hydrostatic setup, but it, you know, backwards is kind of slow and a little iffy. Forward seems to be pretty strong in both directions. Again, might need to adjust the motion control levers a little bit, but not bad. So I think now it's time to put the new PTO on. Because again, the old one had a bearing issue. So we'll start getting that PTO clutch installed. So the first step the instructions talk about is to check the electrical circuit. They want you to plug your multimeter into the PTO harness directly. Mine is really difficult to get to, so I'm just going to check battery voltage. Really all those switches do, the PTO clutch circuit does, is it jumps battery positive to the clutch. It's really that simple. There's not much to it. So if you check battery voltage, as long as there isn't a problem with your wiring, which is possible, so check your wiring, you should be okay. So we want 13.4 volts to 14 volts DC. With the engine off, we're at 13 right now. I don't know if you guys can see the fluke meter all the way down there. Hopefully you can see that. We're at 13 volts. I'm going to crank it up and just make sure that we get an acceptable voltage with everything running. We were at 13.7 at full throttle. That should be fine. They want between 13.4 and 14, so we're good to go there. Now, I should have mentioned that sometimes when these PTO switches fail, they kind of fail partially on or partially off or somewhere in between. So you want to be at 0.0 volts DC with it off. So that's one place where you probably do want to check your wiring. I'm going to do that. Well, no, probably don't need to do that. I know this PTO switch works just fine. But that's something you should check if you can, because otherwise you don't want like, you know, like 10 volts or whatever, right? Maybe there's some current leakage across there. Let's see. So now we're gonna remove the belt. Note the component locations. Okay, engine side. All right. So not that much to do here. I'm gonna put a little bit of anti-seize on the crankshaft, just so if we ever have to remove this again, it's not going to be a monumental effort. Now, you probably had a spacer between the either between the engine block and the clutch, or between the drive pulley and the clutch. So make sure you put this spacer back on there, so that's reused. Hopefully you guys can see some of what I'm doing here. I'm just getting ready to get the clutch back in place. This engine's hot, so I may delay this operation until it cools down a bit, because I don't feel like getting burnt. And the muffler is right here. Trying to find that keyway. I need to turn this thing over by hand to line it up. This is not lining up right now. Hopefully you guys can see that I got everything lined up. I got that little groove lined up there, which keeps the clutch from turning. Now I just have to tighten that bolt on the bottom. Apologize for the camera work, but it's very tight space under here. Okay, so that's what things look like when the bolt is just barely hand tight in there. We have to hook our wiring harness up all the way in the back too. But we have to torque that bolt down too, and they don't want you to use impact guns on this thing. I don't exactly know why. They claim they're sensitive and this and that. You know what? I won't use an impact gun. I'll be nice. And I think they want this, this is a grade 5 bolt. I think they want this at like 40, 45 foot-pounds of torque, so we'll do that. So to torque this down, I got a fairly large crescent wrench on that D portion. And I got my 5/8 socket. I think I may have said 9/16 before. I apologize. I got my 5/8 socket and torque wrench on the bolt. So we'll just turn until we hear a click. Or until the crankshaft turns. How lovely. Let's get a better grip on it. Maybe like that. Of course, you guys probably can't see, but how interesting is this really anyway? There we go. I think I got a good grip on it now. Let's hold it back here and work smart. Whoop. So much for working smart. We can get that D to line up in a favorable place again. Just barring the engine over a little bit. Well, I won't bore you with this part. You get the idea. Okay, I got the clutch bolt torqued. That kind of sucked. Now I got to reach back and connect this harness. Installation is the reverse removal, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, and just snap it together. And something broke. Hopefully nothing too important. Are we together? I think we might be. Yep, I think we're together. Oh, no, we're not. Nice. Let's try that again. Something I probably should have done with the mower up in the air, huh? Oh man, that's tight. All right, two hands. I think we need to use a screwdriver to kind of pry this connector over the edge there. I think that's what's keeping it away. Okay, I finally get it locked in there. That kind of sucked, but got it done. And don't forget to put your PTO belt back on. I have a new one on order, but this one's still good enough to run for now. So slip that on, and then just kind of walk it onto this pulley. It's a two-handed operation, but really what you gotta do is just kind of get it in the groove. And just maybe I could do it with one hand. Just don't want to pinch myself. But you get it. Two hands, walk it around like that. All right, let's give her a quick test. I know for a fact the spindle bearings are bad, so if you hear a whirring sound, that's where it's coming from. So I'm just going to start the motor up, engage the PTO, let it run for a second, shut it off, and then we'll do the spindle bearings some other time. I got a whole stack of those ready to go in. They're pretty noisy. Get ready. Crank her up. So our PTO is working just fine. I should have mentioned this part actually came with a dielectric piece already in the harness. That's why I didn't put any in there. So yeah, we're good to go. Now I just need to get onto the spindles. So I'm going to remove the deck to work on these spindles. I think it'll just be a lot easier that way. Looks like it's pretty easy to take off. They have these little spring-loaded pull clips on either side. And the front looks like it just held up a little bracket there. So you just have to pull these spring clips out with a pair of pliers and the deck falls down. I'm putting a 4x4 on the back of the deck just to hold it up. I had to whack these with a hammer just to loosen them up because this thing's a little rusted, but I'll show you how it works. So you just kind of get in here with, yeah, get out, and that's it. And then the deck should be loose. Looks like we'll have to pull it forward a couple inches to get out of those brackets. And I believe it's pulled out from this side, this charge side. Okay, so let's drag it out. There she goes. Should be much easier to work on like that. Now we can see what we're doing. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? Get you guys a little bit closer. So, bearings in that one are toast. Let's take our belt off. We don't need this right now. A couple little score marks, nothing too serious. That one doesn't sound so hot either. That one sounds less bad. Hyper doesn't sound so hot. Neither does that one. Okay, so we got some problems here. Good times. All right, I'm gonna move the tractor out of the way, give us some room to work. We'll flip this deck up and we'll take the spindles off. What I did this morning is I shot some penetrating oil on the screw holes there, on all the spindles, just because I think these like to strip out. They're self-tappers and an aluminum housing that's subject to corrosion and all sorts of nastiness, so that's what I did. I recommend you do the same. Okay, let's take the blades off. Got the deck mounted against my workbench here. I need to impact down and buzz these on. Thought it was. Wow, okay. Upgraded to the big brother Ingersoll ran, or the bigger brother, I should say. So, no problem. And the last one. Fairly tight. That's what she said. Okay, now that we got the blades off, we can start looking at these spindle knots. I hold the spindles on. You guys still see? Yeah. You're good. So I don't think we're going to need the big Ingersoll ram for that one. Hopefully. Let's see what size those are. Right size, but pockets too big. Maybe half or 9/16. Anything else in this crack? So we'll do one of those too. Maybe half inch. Half inch it is. Now again, sometimes these things break, so I have been soaking these with penetrating oil with the hopes that I don't break anything, but we'll see. Maybe I'll get lucky, right? Okay with that one. Good. Let's do this one first. Yep. No breakage. I like. So one spindle is out on the mesh. Let's do the next. That was scary. spindles, you can buy them. They're not terribly expensive, but bearings are a lot cheaper. And these spindles are not greasable from the factory, so I was thinking of adding a greaser. So I don't have to worry about repeat bearing failure. We can fix a problem. If we're having a problem, why not, right? Last ones. All spindles out, and thankfully didn't break anything. That's what I like. Let's get this deck out of the way before I kill myself with it. Set it down here for the time being. Let's resituate you guys. So inside, there's a spacer between those two bearings. I've kicked it over to one side so I can catch the edge of the bearing down here with a punch. Just like so. Then tap that bearing out. Or maybe not. Maybe we need a bigger hammer. Brass ain't gonna cut it. Starting to come out. Ow. Maybe there's a couple spacers in here. Yeah, it's starting to pop out there, you can see. Got an edge on it. A little bit of persistent tapping, and out came two spacers and this really grindy bearing there. So now, this is the easy part. You look down, way down deep in there, hopefully you guys can see that. There's a bearing all the way at the end, so we gotta tap that one out now. That should be hopefully easier. We'll see. I'm gonna hit that with some oil. Maybe that'll help. A little bit of PB Blaster, not a sponsor. Let's get a bigger punch. Let's do some light tapping first. Is it moving? Let's close this up a little bit so I don't damage anything. I think it is coming. Yep, I can see it moving. See? It's coming. And we're right about the lip. And there goes the second bearing. So now we have a completely empty spindle housing. Let's see what this bearing feels like. Not that it really matters, we're replacing it. That one's a little bit less bad. That one's definitely got some water in there for sure. And now, these bearings that came out are 6204-2RS. It's stamped there on the seal. So toss those in the garbage. Because somewhere around here I have a whole new stock of them. Where did I put them? Bearings. Where are you, bearings? There we go. And we got our brand new 6204 RS bearings there too. So now what we got to do is clean up this spindle housing a bit. You can see it's pretty gritty in there. And I wonder if I can drill that for a grease zerk. That would be kind of neat, wouldn't it? We'll see if we can do that. To clean it up, I'm going to use my wire wheel and an angle grinder. Don't want to go too heavy because this is aluminum. Now I think we'll hit this with some degreaser, clean the inside and out. Through the spindle and the ultrasonic cleaner, spindle housing rather, just to get all the last bits of dirt and grime before we seal it up and put new bearings in there. Okay, so now I'm going to install a grease zerk right in this area. And this part is all above the deck because the deck sits right there. This should make it able. We should be able to grease it now. I'm gonna check it to make sure. Yeah, we should be able to grease gun fitting there. I'm gonna drill a small hole here. It's a soft aluminum. It should go pretty easily. Okay, so we got our hole right there. I have a grease fitting. It's a 1/4 28. So I need to widen that a little bit. Yeah, let me open that up. I think I selected one drill this size too small. This is a. Oh, this one's all ground up too. I guess I need to drill this. Let me see if I can get a 1/4 20 tap in there, 20 tap in there. Maybe we'll get lucky. See if I have it first. Nope. Stand by. Okay, so I got my 1/4 28 tap. We're just slowly threading this in, creating the threads that we need. A little bit of thread cutting oil on here too. And it feels like we're just about through. Yep, we're good. Thought I was going to need a bigger drill bit, but nope. Take that out. If you don't have these taps, you know, you can pick these up in a hardware store. Most will have them. Picking the right grease fitting here. Just like so. You might want to put a little bit of Loctite on there, just so this doesn't back itself out. I'll put a bit of blue Loctite on there. Got my blue Loctite, now we'll just snug this up, make sure it doesn't come out. That's good, now we can grease this spindle anytime we need to. Now, since we have a greasable spindle, we got to take the grease seal out of one side of the bearing. You want one side to remain sealed, but the other side you want to take the seal out. And they just pop out. And you can see there's very minimal grease in there right now. So what I'll do is I'll pack this with grease, and then we'll pump some grease into the housing to make sure it's well greased. So we got our new bearing lightly tapped in there. Actually put the spacer in like so, and the shaft rides, have it upside down. Don't want to do that. And the shaft sits just like that. Now we're going to put our spacers in there. Make sure your spacers are clean too. And pry the seal out of the other bearing. Just like so, and this faces down. Then I'll pack this with grease before I install it too. Okay, so I used the grease fitting and I pumped the whole spindle housing full of grease, or pretty full of grease. So now I'm going to put that second bearing in there on the top. Move you guys around a little bit. So I packed the bearing with grease. This just slides in like so. And then we put our spacer back on top for the pulley, which is somewhere around here, I think. Let me go find that. Okay, so we got our spacer. There's actually another little washer that gets installed there too. Mine was stuck to the pulley, that's why I didn't see it. And then we just got to put that top nut back on. Kind of anchors it all together. I wouldn't advise tightening this down too tight because that'll preload the bearings, and I don't think you want to do that too much. Otherwise you'll break them or wear them out. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to repeat this same process for the other two spindles, and we should be good to go. Obviously got to tighten this down, but this thing turns very nicely and very quietly now. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful, showing you how to rebuild a deck spindle. It was a couple hours later. I had to take care of some stuff, and I was thinking back to what I said or may not have said to you guys. I just want to clear something up that occurred to me that I may have misspoken about. When you tighten this pulley on the shaft with this nut, you're not going to damage the bearing. I think I may have said that you will, because these spacers control where pressure is put in the bearings. So if you ever get a bearing in a position where, oh boy, I'm out of grease, lovely. If you ever get a bearing in a position where you're shearing across the balls inside the bearing, the ball bearing, or, yeah, I realized I just said shearing across the balls, that's what she said. You never want to put pressure on the inner race and holding the outer race, or vice versa, because that puts the balls of the bearing in a shearing state. You don't want to do that. What these spacers do is they keep the force on the shaft and on the inner race of the bearings, not shearing across the inner race and the outer race. So you're not going to hurt the bearings by tightening that nut down a lot. And I need to go get another tube of grease. But this is a spindle 3 of 3, so we're making good progress. I took the deck outside and cleaned it up with some simple green and water. I also wire wheeled some of the obvious rusty areas, so I'm just going to clean it up with a elapsed sander a little bit before we get to finishing. I'm not going for a showroom quality finish here, just a corrosion prevention. guys get the idea. Now that that's done, I'm using some acetone and a paper towel to remove any oily residue that may have come from the DA or my hands or we're always on the deck. It's never too long. If you have oil on here when you paint just isn't going to stick anyway. So you want that deck to be super clean. So the paint has a nice surface to adhere to. Dabbing a little bit of acetone on there. Just wipe it off with a towel. Main thing, it's all in the prep work, so I'm sure you guys painted it. Anyway, you guys get the idea. Make sure everything's nice and clean. Any loose paint is gone. Let it dry. Okay, got my paint all shaken up. I would wear some PPE, but because of coronavirus, that seems to be all gone. And as you notice, I'm focusing on the top of the deck, primarily because that's where the sides of the deck are going to get mashed up anyway. And the top of the deck is where all the water sits, and you want to make sure that you don't have any water sitting there. I realized I forgot to mask something off. It's going to mask off that label that shows the belt routing. Let me find some blue tape. Okay, time to paint. Should have mentioned this is a paint and primer in one, so that's the reason I'm not priming first. You guys get the idea. Okay, I got a couple coats on the top of the deck. Don't look too closely. Again, this is designed for corrosion prevention, not looks. When I sprayed some of the duplicolor, the existing paint on the deck on the edges started to flake up and curl. So again, this is not for looks, this is for corrosion prevention, so a lot better than it was. But again, don't paint the car this way. We got two new deck pulleys to replace the really loud ones, namely here. This one's not so bad. That one's almost silent, so we'll leave that alone for now. Looks like a 1/2-inch wrench to take them off. Let me check before I tell you that for sure. Nope, 9/16. Sorry about that. I rolled it wrong. Yep, perfect. So we'll buzz those off with the impact gun. Alright, so let's buzz these guys off. One. Two. Real easy. Back inside. Stop eating that. Get back. Silly dog was eating old grass. Okay, so one of these had this spacer in there, so that goes like that. our bolt. Our washer. Just like so. Nothing to it. And we'll do the same thing on the back too. But that one does not have a spacer. Put our washer in, or nut. Just like so. And the paint on this deck is really bad. Jeez. I need to get this thing sandblasted, but again, it's a lawnmower. One. Two. Nice and quiet. That's how that's done. So I did some research on the transmission belt that I put in. I think I told you guys I put in a Gates belt. I think it was a 2580. Did some research and I found that Cub Cadet, I guess MTD, has issued a replacement OEM belt. You can see it looks quite a bit different. It has that brown outer jacket, which I believe indicates it's an aramid fiber belt, which is quite a bit stronger than a traditional fan belt, which is what's on there. So, yeah, wasted a little bit of money on that Gates belt. It's not performing badly, but I just am concerned about the longevity, so I'm going to put this belt in there. Part number is 954-04043B. The original belt, I believe, ended in A. Before I get to that, I'm going to resolve my pesky oil leak at the governor shaft seal, which, as you can see, is leaking quite a bit. It's only a day or two. And that seal is located all the way back in there. Let me get some lighting so you guys can see a little bit better. Hopefully that's a little bit better. Anyway, that seal is located all the way back in there. And to get to it, you have to take off this governor arm. And to do that, you can see there's a pinch bolt here, just a 10mm, like everything else in this motor. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Yep, to loosen that bolt and possibly split open that pinch with a screwdriver or other appropriate prying device. Let's see if this one slides off. Probably not. No. We'll need to get a suitable prying device. Let's see, what should we use? Just Klein. You guys are probably getting motion sickness sitting on this plywood. Hang on. Okay, so I'm just using a screwdriver to spread that pinched section, which allows the shaft to slide off like so. You can see the evidence of the leak. Put that goo behind there. Now you don't need to take anything else off the governor shaft, or the governor arm I should say. Just to kind of show you guys up close. So you don't have to remove this bolt or anything else really, you're just loosening that pinch section right there. And that's what the governor shaft looks like. All the way back in there. Put a screwdriver on the seal. All the way back in there. Let there be light, right? So that's what you're dealing with. So now to get that seal out, we're going to use some picks to try to extract it. You can see that the whole area is just nice and wet with oil. Yeah, so let's get to it. Get you guys back on the tripod. Alright, so let's clean that shaft off a little bit. Air in there. really move that much. I'm not sure why the seal went bad, but they do go bad. I'm trying to remember which tool I used last time I did one of these. It's been a little while. The trick is to pierce the seal and kind of use one of these hooks to jab at it and extract it. Maybe I use a different one. Yeah, this might be it. Got a bunch of these little picks. They come in real handy. So, got this one. If you need dental work, they're great for that too. Just kidding. Let's see, what can I use to pierce that? What did I use last time? I think we'll get lucky and it'll just come right out. I doubt it though. So I'm getting the seal driver in between the shaft and the seal. I need more light, I can't see. Stand by. Hopefully you guys can see a little bit better too. Let's try this other tool. Oh, that one's not going to work. And that's kind of the process you got to follow. I won't bore you guys with the whole thing, but that's what you got to do. Well, this seal is super stubborn. What I ended up having to do was kind of go around it and collapse the seal in on itself. So you can see it's pretty loose now. Now I just got to pry it out. I think I might need a new set of picks after this one. This one is a pain in the neck. But that's kind of what you have to do, right? Got to get the job done. I'd be able to yank it with a pair of pliers. If I had a pair of pliers nearby. Let's see. A little pair of pliers here. Can we yank this thing out? Bits and pieces of it anyway. Maybe not yet. This thing is being super stubborn. So close. Get in there now and behind it and pry. What the heck is holding this thing in there? Jeez. Can't be much. There we go. It's coming. Probably in pieces. There we go. Got it. Destroyed the darn thing. but wasn't sealing anyway, right? Let's clean it out with some compressed air. Looks like there's still a piece of seal there. So you can yank that out with a pair of pliers. Man, this thing is stubborn. I'm not sure what that is. It might just be a bit of RTV or something. Okay, I got the new seal on the shaft. I'll get you the part number in a minute. I'm just going to slide it on and drive it on with a 3/8" socket. Happens to be just the perfect size. I put a little bit of RTV on the outside. I need a longer extension here. Almost there. I think we got it. Smear our RTV around a little bit. Q-tip works really well for that. Let me go get one. Okay, so I got my Q-tip. Just gonna smear that RTV around in there. Make sure it's in there real good. Maybe put a little bit of extra on there. The shaft doesn't move a whole lot, so it's not like this thing's going to spin around and around. I think that'll do it. Maybe a little bit more on the bottom. These things love to leak. And obviously I cleaned all this off with brake cleaner before I did any of this. Okay, that'll do it. And I owe you guys a part number today. Part number for the seal is 920497019. And that's what the parts bag looked like. I don't know if you can see that, if the camera can zoom. Got it from Bill's Place. It was an Amazon purchase. Got 2 seals, I think, for, I don't know, like maybe $10 if I had to guess. I don't remember the exact amount, but hopefully that fixes our leak. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Here's the Gates 2580 I just put on the tractor and the OEM belt on top that just arrived. I mean, they're about the same size, but again, the OEM belt has that fiber cord on the outside, whereas the Gates does not. So I've had pretty good luck with these types of belts on mower decks, so hopefully it'll do just as well in the transmission. Gonna spare you guys the installation process since you've already seen that. Got the OEM belt on. I'll tell you, that belt is a bit shorter. I had to stretch that spring. Wow, that was tough. That spring is very strong, and with a shorter belt, It was a lot of work. Geez, you can hear him out of breath. Not easy at all. I was getting ready to put these spindles back on, but I noticed that the threads in the spindle itself are gone. I don't know if you can see that, but top couple threads are gone. That one doesn't seem to have any threads. That one's got a few. That one's missing most of them. So obviously without threads in the spindle, that could become a serious safety issue. So what I've decided to do, I'm going to use these 5/16 by 18 bolts and put nuts on the top or on the bottom and just ignore the threads. Then the threads become a moot issue, and then we won't use these bolts anymore. The ones that came with these self-tappers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill the old threads out using, what size drill bit this is, but just find one that's a little bit bigger than the threads of the bolt. I'll show you how that works. So, put your drill bit in there, just like so. We're taking off a very small amount of material, just enough to clean the threads out. So now, you should slip in there nicely. Just like so. Now we don't have to worry about these spindles flying off while the deck's in operation. So I'm going to do that to the other 3 spindles that we got. First, let's do a test fit. So I've got my spindle here, 2 bolts sticking out. I'll fit those in, like so. Put a serrated nut on this side. You know what? I think I'm going to actually put some anti-seize on those before I do this. Stand by. Guys, we might have to take these off someday, right? Let's get those. A little bit of anti-sneeze. Let's just get one in there first. Some on the bolt. Bolt. Now pay attention to where your grease fitting is, because you want to make it so you can get to it. Yeah. Mount it in a location that's difficult to get to, you'll never use it. What's the point, right? Alright, so I got one on there. Seems to fit pretty well. Let's get the others going. Anti-sneeze. Put our through the hole like so. Try that on. And in case anybody's wondering, I got these fasteners from McMaster-Carr. I'm sure Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever would have them too, but you know, sometimes you go to those stores looking for something. They say they have them in stock online. You get there, they're nowhere to be found. So I decided to just order them from a supply house that I know is going to have them and deliver them reliably. I don't have to mess around with it. One less thing to worry about. And now this setup is obviously going to be far stronger than the original setup. I'm sure the original setup with self-tappers was done to reduce manufacturing costs. But at what cost, really? If I didn't do this, I would have had to replace all the spindles, because all the threads are messed up in pretty much all of them. I really don't want these spindles flying off while I'm mowing. I'm going to have a bad day if I do that. So that's kind of what the setup looks like. Let me get a 1/2 inch wrench. Bolt things on the other side. And we'll buzz those bolts on with the impact driver. One. Two. Three. One thing about anti-sneeze, it's everywhere. Four. And that's what she looks like. Get you guys a little closer so you can see the finished product. And on the other side, that's what things look like. Heck of a lot stronger. Alright, so I'm just going to repeat that process for the other two spindles. Alright guys, I got all the spindles installed, got new fasteners, just dressed up the blades a little bit. The blades are not in the best of shape, so if this thing works out pretty well and cuts decent, I'll just buy new blades. Now it's time to put the deck back in. Alright, so we got our new belt. This is a Gates Blade Runner belt. These things have aramid fibers embedded in them. They're supposedly stronger than Kevlar. They're really, really good for electric PTO clutches. So we're going to go ahead and install our belt following the belt diagram on the deck. Alright guys, we got our new belt installed. I just followed the belt routing diagram on the deck. If you guys don't have that label, there it is for you. So I think we're ready to let it cut, see what happens. Our governor shaft is still nice and oil free. Let's let her run. Let's crank her up. Oh, gotta put the parking brake on, I guess. There we go. No, what am I forgetting? Got the parking brake. PTO is on. Motor's running. I shut the machine off just so I could describe to you guys the burnishing procedure. So what you got to do is start the machine up, get it up to half throttle. The instructions say all this too, but get the machine up to half throttle, turn the clutch on, let it get up to speed, shut it off, let it come to a stop. Same thing on and off, and just do that 10 times. So let's get it started and I'll show you what that looks like. Do that procedure, your clutch probably won't last as long. There's a brake in there and all sorts of other stuff, and you got to kind of break that clutch material in so that everything breaks and kind of gets meshed together properly. So make sure you do that after you get your new clutch installed. Let's go for a ride. Actually cut my front lawn with it. Didn't want to bore you guys and sit here for 10 minutes mowing, driving around, but you can see it's got a pretty good quality of cut. I did put new blades on there. The old ones weren't too bad, but I got a 3-pack for, I think it was maybe 30 or 40 bucks, so that wasn't too bad. Got a really nice cut. Rivals the best commercial mower I've seen, quite honestly. Hydros worked well, clutch worked well. So I think this tractor is just about done. Not much else to do other than cosmetic work. You know, I could fix some of this paint here. I might replace the bushings in these front wheels just because they're a little wobbly, but they're not tragic. I do have a bushing kit on order. If I decide to put that in, I'll let you guys know. I'm not gonna, I think I mentioned, I'm not gonna replace this. This was 80 bucks. Not worth it. Too much money. But yeah, purrs like a kitten. New clutch works great. Hydros are pretty good. They're not perfect, but for a 450-hour residential tractor, they're not bad. Occasionally, it won't turn on a dime, but I think that might be actually a tire traction issue, because I noticed when that happens, it's typically on pavement. My driveway is painted, so I think the wheel is just slipping, quite honestly. It'll pull a wheelie, so the hydros work just fine. So yeah, that's it. If you like this series of videos, just let me know. Leave your feedback in the comments. If you like the channel, you like this video, please subscribe. Thanks, guys, and stay safe.